This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to the second annual, not second annual, but second Royal Philatelic Society Club Leaders Meeting. We're very glad that you're here. And for those of you that aren't here who are listening later on, thank you for doing that as well. The point behind these Zoom meetings is to bring club leaders together to discuss issues that they may be having or to celebrate triumphs, to act as kind of a think tank and a clearinghouse for ideas. We all negotiate the challenges that are going on in running a philatelic organization and a club post-COVID. So tonight's topic is going to be about amalgamations and about bringing stamp clubs together to make one stronger organization out of perhaps two organizations that aren't quite as thriving as they were. And I'm really grateful to John Hyland and Bruce Pollock for being here with us tonight. John, and this comes directly from John Sheffield. John Hyland was the mastermind behind the amalgamation of the London and the Middlesex stamp clubs in Ontario into what is now the London Middlesex Stamp Club. And Bruce Pollock is helping to negotiate and bring together the Vancouver Island Philatelic Society and the Greater Victoria Philatelic Society. So one completed project and one project in the works. So I don't know which one of you would like to go first, but we'll turn the floor over to you, and thanks for being here with us.
Well, you choose.
Right, John. John Hyland, why don't you go second? Because Bruce can talk to us about where he is, and then you can talk to about how you got to where hopefully they will get eventually. Okay. So John, Bruce, you go first. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Just give me a second to get this going here. Okay. So hopefully everybody can see that all right. Okay, so yeah, thanks for the opportunity, because this has been a bit of a road for us, and I wanted to actually putting this material together was a good opportunity to kind of gather my thoughts about how we went about this. And another thing we were trying to do, I think, is actually record our process and our methodology and our journey, if you like, and actually kind of record it for our club history. The clubs have been around for 100 years almost, and this is a big change for both of us, both clubs. And so it's an opportunity to kind of continue recording what's happened. So come on now, change slides. There we go. So for those of you who don't know, just a little bit of club history first. The first stamp club in Victoria was formed in 1915 at the Victoria High School. I'm hoping that most of you will know Jerry Welburn as one of Canada's most distinguished philatelists. He was a high school student at the time, and he was the secretary of the first club at the high school at that time. But the Vancouver Island Philatelic Society was formed in 1931. Initially, they were going to call it the Victoria Philatelic Society, but since Jerry lived up island in Duncan, they switched the name up a little bit and called it the Vancouver Island Philatelic Society, just so that he could be included in it. And historically, the culture of the VIPS was pretty serious philatelic study. And along the way, there was a group of people who felt that maybe it was perhaps a little bit over their heads, and they were looking for something a little less formal, a little less structured perhaps. And so in 1939, the Greater Victoria Philatelic Society was formed as a bit of an alternative for those people who were maybe not quite as highfalutin as the VIPS types. I think over the years, Victoria probably benefited from the retirement effect. I mean, as you all know, Victoria is a place that people wanted to come to retire. And of course, many of those were collectors. And so the clubs, were fairly strong in attracting new members, They weren't necessarily young members, but they were new members who had moved here from around Canada. I think that probably has slowed down considerably over the last few years because of just housing prices and probably many other factors. But like most clubs, the membership had been dwindling. We had more aging and few new younger members wanting to join in. And at the time of just before COVID, VIPS had about 65 members and GVPS about 45 members. The problem we really had is that most of those people, many of those people, is probably fair to say, had been slow to come back to meetings after we got things rolling again during the pandemic. I mean, it took all of us, I think, a while to kind of, get our wheels back on the ground and get things going. And people were anxious about coming out to meetings. But even now that we're at this date when we're through, some would say, the worst of the pandemic, we still have not really got back to our pre-COVID attendance. And on top of that, we had a real dearth of members who were willing to step up and take on leadership positions. And it just got to the point where I think people were feeling kind of tired and a little bit worn out and wondering what to do. The idea of merging the clubs had been floated several times over the years, but it never really achieved broad support. And I think part of the problem was there were a few influential members who had been around for a long time who liked to maintain the the structure of the two clubs that I mentioned earlier and the focus that they had. But over time, at least, and I'm a new member, I've really only joined about 4 years ago, I guess. It became apparent that the clubs had become pretty similar in their focus, and there are many people who are members of both clubs. So by the early part of this year, there was a group of us who started exploring this whole problem and started looking at ways that we might attract new and younger members, did a lot of research, a lot of discussion. And we finally decided that we needed to tackle this problem by getting the members together and formally proposing the merger of the clubs, simply as a way to join our forces and join our energy. We were reasonably confident, having just had one-on-one chats with various members. We were pretty confident that there was the support there that had not been there in the past, but we didn't really know until we kind of got going. So we started off by forming an executive advisory group, which was made of the executive members of both clubs, plus a few other respected senior members of the club community. And the group discussed how to proceed best. And we initially decided that what we would do is start off with a town hall meeting, which we held back in June. We invited all the members of both clubs to attend, to come in and talk about the problems and talk about our proposal for moving forward. We had roughly 1/3 of the potential members who attended this town hall meeting. So at that meeting, we introduced who was on the executive advisory group. And I think that helped a lot because people could see that it was a respected group that had, their confidence. And we spent quite a bit of time at that meeting laying out the case for change and the problems that the clubs were facing. Now, I guess if anybody else is considering doing this, to me, this is probably the most important thing to do, especially if you are sensing that some people may resist the idea of joining two clubs together. I think you really have to spend some time helping people to understand that, things can't go on the way they are. And so we spent quite a bit of time laying out the case for change. But we also benefited from having just come off the call that Greg was referring to a few minutes ago with Sid Menzinga, where he spent quite a bit of time helping us to understand how the West Toronto Club operates. And I can tell you that when I summarized much of what we learned from Sid's presentation, there was a lot of interest from the members. And I think I could sort of see, wheels in heads turning and people sort of nodding, oh yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. We should try that kind of thing. So that was very helpful to me, at least, as I laid this material out to everybody. But beyond just talking about the need for amalgamating the clubs, We also tried to lay out a bit of a vision for what the future could look like once we got to the point of having one club. And the way I was pitching it was the broader objective was to try to revitalize philately on the whole of southern Vancouver Island, not simply just merge the two clubs, because there are a number of other smaller clubs in our region that are not captured by the amalgamation, but who could also benefit from some support. So that was the broader objective that we pitched. And I summarize it by saying, revitalizing one club is going to be challenging enough, but revitalizing two clubs is just probably not viable at all. So we took a straw poll, and there was strong support. But members were also pretty clear that they wanted to see a formal plan of how we would make this happen. So that was, from our perspective, that was good news. And so the executive advisory group went away to sort of scope out that formal plan and how we would go about doing it. We started out by one of the things the members wanted to know was we've got financially the clubs are both pretty healthy. We also have the benefit here in Victoria of working quite closely with the Wellburn Foundation. After Jerry Wellburn passed away a number of years ago, he created a fund to support philately in Vancouver Island. And we work, the executive and members of the Wellburn Foundation are also members of both of the clubs. And so, although they're not captured by this per se, financially we have a lot of support, both between the clubs and from the Wellburn Foundation. However, the members were also saying, we want to know, how this looked like. What are the assets? What are the financial situations, et cetera? We also started working on a draft constitution right away for the new club. There were some things about the old constitutions that were either a little bit too informal, or a little bit perhaps vague. And so we also developed a series of resolutions as to how we were going to go about doing the vote, because as I said, the members really wanted to see a bit of a structured plan. One of the things we wrestled with was voter eligibility. Like most clubs, you have people who kind of drift in and drift out, and they pay their dues this year and then they don't pay them next year. And COVID was really a confusing factor for us because we didn't really know how to say somebody was a particular eligible voter, even though they might be on our membership list. Where we sort of said, well, we could sort of say everybody is if you think you're a member, here's a ballot, which didn't seem to be very logical. Or we could say only if you've paid your 2023 dues are you a member. And that seemed a bit harsh as well, because there were people who had been reluctant to come back during or after COVID. So where we settled was if they had been a paid up member at the moment that in 2020 when COVID hit us, then they would be considered a member for eligibility. So this was what was proposed to the membership. We also talked to the members about how we would then prepare a voters list. We talked about the voting procedure and how that would be undertaken. We nominated a returning officer who would be responsible for overseeing the voting. We also put out there the precise wording of the question that would be put to members of each club, because the way it was worded was, we have to wind up two clubs. So rather than talking about amalgamating two clubs, what we've talked about is creating a new club and then dissolving this club and dissolving that club. And so you have to make sure you've got the support of the members of each club. Theoretically, it's possible you could have a situation where one club votes in favor of this amalgamation and the dissolution of their existing club, and the other club did not. I don't think that's likely, but theoretically it's possible. So that was the way we structured it. Are you in favor of creating a new club and dissolving your current club? And that was the question that was approved. We also talked about what would be a required majority for the vote, and we also have put to them a new club name, which has been approved. We will be known as the Victoria Stamp Club. We decided that a philatelic society in the 21st century probably is not going to be the way to go to attract new and younger members. So we've tried to simplify things by calling it the Victoria Stamp Club. So that is official, that has been approved by the membership. So we then called a special general meeting. This happened back in mid-July, and all members of both clubs were invited. And we tabled all of these resolutions with them and went through one by one and discussed each resolution, and they were voted upon. Each one of them passed with a almost unanimous majority. And as I said, we've now named the club the Victoria Stamp Club. So the next step was to then commence the actual voting, and that's now underway. So what happens from here on in is that the voting will end on August the 31st, and the returning officer will be gathering up all of the ballots and counting them and making a report. Our plan is then to hold a second special general meeting in the middle of September, where the voting results will be formally announced. I mean, they'll probably be announced informally before that. But we would then ask the membership to ratify these results and to approve the new constitution. So assuming that this all comes to pass and that this is all approved by the balloting, we would then start up a new club in the period of October to December. We have an interim board of directors lined up. We'll start by opening up a new bank account and start transferring financial assets, etc., and also working on new programming for the remainder of 2023. But it's likely that for the remainder of this year, there will continue to be two clubs, just because from a practical perspective, you can't just sort of flip a switch and all of a sudden you have common programming. And then by January of 2024, we will be looking to have the first annual general meeting and formally elect the new board of directors. So as I said earlier, we have what I hope is a shared long-term vision amongst everybody. Some people may need to be helped along with some of this, but as I said, there's more than just amalgamation on the table. We were really inspired. Maybe it's more fair to say I was really inspired, and I am trying to convince others of that. But no, I think this is true. Growing the hobby. It would be great to grow new members, but really we want to try to support these other smaller clubs on the South Island. We have a club up in Sydney, which is only a half-hour drive away. There's a smaller club up in Duncan in the Cowichan Valley. There's a club up in Nanaimo, who we've made contact with and informed them of what's going on and sort of talked about, assuming this all comes to pass, how we can look to work together with them and help to support them a little bit. We also want to really step up our marketing activity. We're going to be overhauling our website and trying to make better use of social media to get the word out about who we are. We are wanting to revitalize our local exhibitions. I'd be interested to hear what other clubs are how they're doing on local exhibitions that they're having, because my sense of it is that younger, newer members nowadays are maybe not so interested in exhibiting. And I know that it's been challenging to get people to actually submit material to an exhibition. So we wanted to look for ways of really kind of boosting that. And finally, we have a lot of local dealers who support us with their great support. And we want to work with them to transform the bourses and attract new people into our bourse activity. So that's the longer term vision, and I think that brings me to the end of what I had to say. So.
Great, Bruce. Thank you very much. Very, very informative and well organized. Lots to think about. Does anybody have anything they want to ask Bruce while the topic is hot in mind? Sure, go ahead, Mark.
Bruce, I was just wondering if you got any pushback on the name, because Victoria Stamp Club and Victoria Philatelic Society are not that dissimilar. It seems to suggest a Victoria focus as opposed to an island focus.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Mark. In fact, we had some discussion around that point. But the fact is that we are Victoria-based clubs. That's where the majority of our members come from. We have a few odds and ends of people one lives up in Port Alberni, for example, and a few others here and there, but the vast majority of people are in the Victoria area. So it would seem to be somewhat misleading to call it the we wanted to get away from Vancouver Island because that had already been used in the previous name. We talked about South Island or the Island Stamp Club, but that's, in fact, I think what we ended up doing was putting two proposed names to the membership. One was the Victoria Stamp Club and the other was the Island Stamp Club, because everybody knows what the island is if you live in BC. But if you live in Prince Edward Island, you may have a different view of what the island means. So it wouldn't be quite so meaningful to people outside of this area. Anyway, the long and the short of it was there was discussion about it, but no, we landed on Victoria Stamp Club.
And based on what you said, I mean, if that's where the concentration of the membership of the two organizations is, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm asking is here in the Okanagan Valley, we have 4 stamp clubs between Vernon, Kelowna, Penticton, and then the Okanagan Club. And 3 of them are struggling. And when we talk about amalgamation with them, there's this deep desire to try to preserve their unique identities as opposed to merging into a singular organization.
Yeah.
But I think that's geography, not in your case,
Yeah.
where it's Victoria.
I think you are probably more hampered by geography than we are, because the 2 clubs that we're talking about merging here are they're in both in Victoria. There's no other way of putting it. All the members live in the Greater Victoria area. Full stop.
And just a technical question. Why wouldn't the Vancouver Island Society donate its assets to the Victoria Philatelic Society, and then the Victoria Philatelic Society do a name change?
Well, that was actually one of the ideas I thought about was, just keep one club going and kill the other club and merge everything into it. But that didn't seem to be respectful of the history of the clubs. These are 2 long-standing clubs, not 90 odd years, as you've seen. And I don't know that would have gone down very well with the members. They were okay with the idea of a fresh start, but I don't know that they would have necessarily supported that approach. And so we didn't really explore it very well.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Bruce.
Bruce, how did you said, I think the Vancouver Island Philatelic Society was the philatelist group. How did the members there how did they respond to the idea that it was going to now become a stamp club that didn't quite seem so threatening?
Yeah, well, as I said, let me back up a little bit. I am new to both clubs. I'm actually kind of a new returnee to collecting because I did it as a kid, and like most of us, didn't really get back into it until I retired. And I joined when I decided I was going to get back into it. I looked them up, and I said, well, there's 2 clubs here. Well, I'll go to this one first because it was on this week, and I'll go to the next one on the next week. And I went there expecting to see some difference between the 2 clubs. And honestly, as a newbie, it was all the same faces. And I kept going to all these, I went for a while, and then COVID kind of killed everything. But, the faces were all the same faces. The presentations were all very similar. So as I said, that notion of the historical culture of the 2 clubs had really kind of dissipated over the years. And they looked to me, as a new outsider, kind of one of the same clubs with different names on them.
Yeah. Because that was one of the things that really surprised me in our club survey that we did back in the beginning of the year, was the number of people who said, well, the RPSC in general is only interested in philatelists and people that exhibit. And over the next year or 2, we're going to try really hard to prove that is not the case. But I really, you have specialist societies, like the PSSC or, some of our other fine Canadian organizations that focus more on specific topics. But it seems to me that a club is a place where everybody ought to be able to come and share what they're interested in and all of that. So I really applaud you all for going down that down that path. I think it's much more welcoming as a club.
Well, just to pick up on that, Greg, I mean, I'm interested in postal history, and so I joined PHSC, and I found pretty quickly that some people have a very strict view of what postal history is. I'm interested in the people who use the mails, and I've been collecting people, not postmarks and post offices and routes and rates and all those things that traditionally have been postal history. And although I've been very greatly supported by the people who I've come to know here in Victoria, like Gray Scrimger, for example, or Bob Stock, who happens to be the president of the PHSC, they don't think that way, but there are many people in that area who do. And I found it a bit frustrating that I couldn't put together an exhibit that was about people who used the mail as opposed to how this letter got from point A to point B and which route it took and what were the rate. Because to me, that's not really very interesting. So I think that these are things that we all have to seriously consider as we try to rejuvenate the whole hobby.
Yeah, agreed. And this said from somebody who's one of his great passions is collecting auxiliary labels from Belgium between 1892 and 1914. So, I mean, I have very specific philatelic interests as well, but I'm just aware that people are afraid of it. If they're quote just a collector, whatever that is, they don't feel a sense of welcome in certain stamp clubs and in certain organizations.
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting point, and thanks for raising it because I guess we've been thinking about how we might be excluding younger, less experienced people because we sound pretty highfalutin, but it could also work the other way. And I hadn't thought about that until you mentioned it. So that's something to very much consider for sure.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. Well, anybody else have anything for Bruce at the moment, or should we go on to John? All right, John, you're up.
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think there's any point in me doing this because Bruce pretty much just did my whole presentation. But
I think
but
I disagree. We want to hear what you have to say, so go
good.
ahead.
Well, here I go then. So this is a look at our new look. Both clubs had logos, and we struggled about mushing them together to create a look that represented both. And we threw that notion out and went in an entirely different direction to kind of emphasize the point that this is something new and exciting. And if this looks familiar, it looks exactly like the Kingston Stamp Club and the Trenton, Ontario Stamp Club, which is Roy Ligdon's territory. So between Roy and John Sheffield, they've created our website, and it's coming along really nicely.
John, can I just say, I don't think you're sharing your screen.
Oh, okay, well, help me out with that.
So if you go down on the bottom, there's the menu on the bottom. There's a thing that says share screen. If you click on that,
Sorry,
that should bring up your PowerPoint or whatever you're using. You see that? It's right in the middle of the bottom.
yeah, I've hit share. This is new to me.
That's okay.
So sorry about that. So share screen and then hit share
Yeah.
and open system preference. Well, did that come up?
No.
Okay.
So actually click on, click on share screen, and then if you'll get a window,
Yeah.
and on the window, if you click on whatever it is you want to share. There'll be a bunch of things showing there, and then click share. That'll show what you want. Okay, so when you click share, a white menu will come up with some screens on it.
Yeah.
Click on the PowerPoint or whatever you're using that you want to share, and then click share.
Well, I'm getting sorry about this.
That's okay.
John, is your presentation open already? And
Yes.
okay,
Well,
Did you click on the share screen?
I did.
Do you have a white? Did something white come up with a bunch of different screens on it, different web? Like,
When I hit share screen, I've got a black box. It's got Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive, Microsoft Share.
okay. Can you see on there? Is Microsoft Share where you were using your? Is
No,
that
it's
your?
an Apple. It's an Apple product.
Okay. If that's where your PowerPoint is, then you
Yeah,
click on.
yeah, it's not PowerPoint. It's the Apple product.
Okay, if you click on the Apple product and then click share in the bottom right-hand corner, that should make it happen. Whichever one of those is your presentation, click on that and then click share, and that should bring it up. Anyone have any other insight?
I'm not familiar with Apple products, so I'm not. But you wouldn't think that would be a
No, it shouldn't be
problem.
a problem.
No. We've all been there, John, so don't worry. If you can't get it to come up, and I'm sure it's beautiful, you could at least talk us through it. And well, maybe what we could do is you can talk us through it, and then if you wouldn't mind me sending it to me, I can send it out to everybody after.
Yep.
If that doesn't, if you can't find it otherwise,
Yeah, I don't know why
yeah.
it's not sharing. Well, I can talk you through it if that's the only thing we can do with it. I just Yeah, I guess we have to do that because I'm not having any.
Okay.
So we created a brand new logo, and we have a good new website. So my title kind of says, after 73 years apart, two clubs are coming together. And the question is, how do you take one and one and make three out of it? In other words, grow the hobby in our area. So the two original clubs, the London Philatelic Society was established in 1892 as club number 9 of the RPSC.
Wow.
It had ineffective leadership. The meeting place was inadequate. Membership was declining. Meetings were disorganized and focused on auctioning of members' material. And the meeting took place on Tuesday evenings twice a month. It was financially sound with about 31 members, and average attendance per meeting was about 18 people. The second club was the Middlesex Stamp Club. It was established in 1950 as a breakaway from the Philatelic Society, and it was club number 203 in the Royal. It had good leadership. Most of the executive positions were filled and functioning. They moved to a larger space post-pandemic, but it was still an inadequate space due to accessibility. Membership was static. New membership almost covering attrition. And it concentrated on presentations and auctions, but a lot of administrative detail at meetings. Meetings were every other Friday and in the afternoon on Friday. That moved from an evening in 2021. So, they changed space, they changed the times. They were a little more progressive, but still not growing. Again, financially sound, about 45 members, and average attendance about 18 in that club as well. Is this adequate for a presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before amalgamation, both clubs were getting by and would have survived at least midterm. But there was a general feeling in both clubs that change was needed. Talk of joining forces had always been there, but accelerated post-pandemic. And again, as with Victoria, over half the active members belonged to both clubs and were regular attendees of both clubs. So because both facilities were inadequate, conditions were ripe for amalgamation. So who are the players, the people that really made this happen? John Arnett was president of the Middlesex Stamp Club for 4 years. Of course, there wasn't much activity during the pandemic. John is an advanced collector, and he was really the catalyst because he brought it up formally to his club, the Middlesex Stamp Club, to pursue amalgamation. And he also did extensive research in finding a new venue and was instrumental in securing a fantastic deal for the new venue. And the Middlesex Club would have moved there, I think, if amalgamation hadn't happened. The second player, John Sheffield, highly respected and successful dealer in our area. He was an active club member at the Middlesex Club, brains behind Canpex, which this year, as Greg mentioned, is hosting the Royal. He had a huge influence on selecting the venue and also talking about meeting dates. He, along with Roy Ligdon, designed and implemented the website, and he's got a lot of loose stamps, 300,000 or 400,000 loose stamps that will become the 10-cent bins, which will be a major potential source of new revenue. The third person, myself, I'm a novice collector with little history of what's gone on in either club. I've been kind of 5 years in both clubs and never on the executives. So we really needed some changes at the London Philatelic. I volunteered to be president but with the mandate to amalgamate the two clubs. So that happened last April, May. I was drafted into the vice presidency of the Middlesex Club. I was scratching my head, I suppose, at the wrong time and discovered I had the job. But with the caveat that I wasn't going to hold office in two clubs come September. So I was kind of pushing things along, I guess. So I guess I see myself as kind of lighting a match and fanning the flames, pushing the thing along. Sorry. So what happened? So this sort of happened simultaneously in both clubs. We had motions to investigate the feasibility of amalgamation, and then the motion to appoint 3-person committees to each club. So those committees, the 3 from each club, met as a committee of 6 to make recommendations. Then a vote by members on the recommendations. This whole process initiated in late April and concluded by early June of this year. And all votes were nearly unanimously approved in both clubs. So that's the process. So approval of the investigation appointment of committee members took place in the regularly scheduled meetings before the summer shutdown. The committee just met twice, and all elements were decided on very quickly. It was very, everybody kind of was on the same page. An email was sent to members to vote on the merger on May the 20th. So that was done by email vote. And those votes came back. And then on May the 30th, the London Philatelic Executive met to approve the proposal. On June the 4th, the Middlesex Executive met and approved the proposal. An announcement by the new club was sent to all members on June 10th. So basically, the committee made its recommendations. The executive approved them, and then the vote by members approved it. And we just said on June the 10th, we got a new club. So some statistics. In Middlesex, there were 31 individuals voted approval. There were no votes, and there were 15 that didn't vote. In the Philatelic Club, 25 approved, 2 disapproved, and 6 didn't vote. So when you take the two clubs and the overlap of the two, we had 38 approvals, 2 disapprovals, and 20 that didn't vote. So based on those numbers, we felt we had a strong mandate to proceed. When we look at the financial concern, as I said, both clubs were financially well off. Bank deposits on one club was 7,000, 9,000 in the other. The club with less cash had more physical assets. So when we compare the two clubs were quite close in the amount of assets they had. And in short order, the one bank account moved into the other, and the funds were all contained within one account. As far as the executive goes, and it's a shame you can't see these slides because my talking about it doesn't help much, but a fellow named Drew was elected president of the Middlesex Club. I was president of the Philatelic Club, and after amalgamation, I became president of the combined club. Drew became vice president. The secretary of Middlesex remained the secretary of the combined club, and the treasurer of the Middlesex became treasurer of the combined club. As I say, the Middlesex club had a stronger executive to begin with. We have 5 trustees that came from both clubs. The key considerations in making this successful, we wanted a centrally located venue. One club tended to meet more or less in the West End, the other club more or less in the East End. So we wanted a venue that was centrally located. We wanted meeting times and days that would suit everyone. We wanted meeting content that would satisfy everyone's needs. We wanted a feeling of being exciting and new, and trying to create an atmosphere that would grow membership, and also create new meaning and purpose to the club. So the venue, which is an important aspect of making things work, is an arena called Nichols Arena. It's in South Central London. We got a sweetheart deal. We're paying less than $50 per meeting for a room that will accommodate up to 200 people. Has good parking. It's in a safe area. It's easily accessible to people who are mobility challenged. So they say the room accommodates up to 200 people. Each club runs a show once a year. The Philatelic Club held it at a Rheumatic Inn. This room is big enough for that show. It's close to where the Campex venue is and has been. So that kind of removes a hurdle for new members, because at Campex, the Royal, we can say, hey, our room is just down the way, it's basically down the road. The facilities easy access to 401 and close to nearby clubs. We have good relationships with the Woodstock Club and the St. Thomas Club, and we feel that this venue will attract some of their members to join our club as well. The other big thing is the arena personnel will set the room up to our specifications. So that makes getting meetings ready so much easier. So schedule and content, we will have 3 meetings a month, one Tuesday evening, which is the same as the Philatelic Society had. And so it's the same time and basically the same content as what that club ran. We have one Friday afternoon, which is the same as the Middlesex Club in time and content. We'll run our business meetings once a month on the Friday, because that club did keep minutes, did have formal meetings, whereas the other club was pretty loose in that regard. Then we're going to do Sunday afternoons, which will be live auctions, buy it now tables, 10-cent bins, and dealers, and be your own dealer. And we feel that Sunday afternoon will attract new members and members of other clubs that may not otherwise come. So that's so all this is just talk. We haven't had our first meeting yet. So this Friday, day after tomorrow, we're having our big inaugural meeting. We sent formal in the mail presentations with RSVP cards to 60 people who we think are members of one or the other club. As with many clubs, you're not sure if a person is still a member or will come back as members. So 60 members, and also 130 guests. We also personally invited members of the St. Thomas and Woodstock clubs. Some of them are coming just to have a look. So our first meeting is just a meet and greet. We're gonna have pizza and pop. We're gonna have displays that show the history of the 2 clubs over the years. We should have around 60 people in attendance. And it's simply a social time. Come and see the new venue, meet the executive, meet old friends, meet new friends, and that's just about it. The other thing that we've done that I think is really important, we've partnered with a charity, the Children's Health Foundation, which supports the Children's Hospital in London. It supports Ronald McDonald House and a couple of other children's charities. So we've invited a representative from that charity to come to talk about what they do in the community. And we've already, through donation of material, raised enough money to give them a $1,000 check at that meeting. It's just my belief that all clubs get donated material and wonder what to do with it. So we felt that partnering with the charity would give the club a bigger purpose, and hopefully that'll be a catalyst to bring people into our hobby. So that's in a nutshell. I'm sorry that I couldn't display it, but as I say, Greg will pass that along. Gee, I haven't done a PowerPoint in 20 years, and Greg made me do it. Then I had to figure out how to do it with an entirely new program that I never used before, and I'm so proud of it. You guys didn't get to see it. So.
We will. If you send it to me, I'll make sure we get it put up. That's great.
I talked quite quickly, and some of the numbers and aspects are hard to follow when you're just listening to me drone along, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Mark.
John, have you made any change to the actual programming of the club in terms of what you would do at a meeting?
Yeah, the Tuesday club was almost exclusively come and have an auction with if there were speakers or presentations, they were poorly prepared, poorly presented, and half the people weren't paying attention. The Friday was a little more formal, some good presentations. So under what we're going to try to do in the future is have continue to do everything, but hopefully do it better. We have some good speakers lined up. Greg is going to come to one of our meetings and give us a talk, I hope.
Sure.
And I work closely with the president of the Woodstock Club, the new president, Bob Bidner, and he has some great ideas. I'm going to steal a bunch of his ideas. Alan Hills in Kitchener, and is also on the executive in Woodstock, has some great handouts that I plan on using. So hopefully a little more structure. I'll certainly send out an agenda 2 or 3 days before every meeting, so that people know exactly what's going to happen. And we have speakers lined up pretty much for the whole year. We have to tighten it up and make sure that they're going to be there, and make sure that their presentations are exciting, and put a time limit on them. You don't want somebody droning on for 90 minutes on something that only 4 people in the room are interested in.
Thanks, Mark. Anybody else?
Just one of the questions that we're struggling with is venue. And even though Victoria is a small, geographically centered place, comparatively speaking, to most places. We do have the challenge. One of the clubs has fantastic meeting facilities in one of the local recreation center buildings, and it's great space. The other one is meeting in a dilapidated old church hall, which is cold and noisy and huge, and it's terrible, and everybody hates it. We've got the other challenge we've got, though, is we've got people who say, I will never go to that place, or I will only go to that place. You know, so you have this problem of you can't please everybody. And we're going to struggle, I think, a little bit to figure out where we meet, and it might be a multitude of places. And the other challenge is meeting times. I heard you say that I think you said the London club was meeting on Tuesday afternoons. Did I get that right?
Yeah, the one club was Tuesday evenings, the other club was Wednesday
Wednesday
Friday
after. Okay,
afternoons.
okay, I got that backwards. In any event, there was a push here to have some meetings in an afternoon, like we tried a Saturday afternoon session, trying to attract new younger people. Well, the problem with that, of course, is that it's only retired people who can go to a meeting on a Wednesday afternoon, which is great for existing members. But if you're trying to attract younger members, that's not going to work. So we're going to have a very hard look at both venue and scheduling to try to figure out a way that's going to be a compromise that people can live with. And I know it's going to be tough.
Yeah. Well, there's no perfect solution. The one club that moved from Friday evenings to Friday afternoons, and attendance went up. Mind you, the average age went up too. But that was a good move on their part. The other Tuesday night, there's lots of people that won't drive at night in the dark, so we've got that problem too.
Yeah, we have that challenge as well, and what we're going to be exploring once the weather starts to turn here is trying to do a little more carpooling, because Victoria is relatively small. You know, and there are members who don't like to drive at night in the wintertime. And so, we're going to look at ways of trying to make sure we can get people to meetings just by pooling some transportation together. Yeah.
Those are real challenges. I mean, we'd like to attract more pre-retirees, but boy, I don't know how we're going to accomplish that. We're hoping that the Sunday afternoons will do that. Also, we're meeting in an arena, so some people think that we might be able to attract younger people who frequent an arena to become interested in stamp collecting. It would be nice to think so, and I hope we get a couple of those. But
one of the challenges we found after COVID is that venue rates now are about $50 an hour. So if you go to have a meeting that's going to have a little auction and a little social time, we're looking at about $150 for that meeting, which is almost impossible to do when you're a small club.
Mm.
One of the things I did do is we incorporated a not-for-profit society, and that allows us to get some preferred pricing, particularly with governmental organizations. So,
I'd encourage anyone to talk to John Arnett in London here. He approached the city with this story about getting seniors active and with an educational program and hopefully attracting young people. And he managed, I don't know how he did it, to get the City of London to give us this room in the arena at less than half price. Simply by approaching it as we're providing a community service here, and something that is he pulled the seniors card to acquire a great rate.
I guess that works for just about all of us, doesn't it?
Those damn seniors.
Damn seniors.
Yeah,
So
what I think is really interesting about this is you have two clubs that, or four clubs that have amalgamated in two completely different ways. You know, one dissolving the two clubs and creating a new one, the other one building on the strengths of both and coming up with something, that honors the history and heritage of what went before it. And it's just a different way to do it. I had an amazing mentor when I was just starting out of my job or my work as a church musician, where I've spent most of my life. And he used to say, because I would say to him, how do I get, like, I'm in a little church, how do I get people to join my choir? And he said, well, you don't get them to join your choir by saying, look, we need choir members. Would you like to join? And I said, well, that seems like a good way to do it. And he said, well, no, the problem is nobody wants to sail on a sinking ship. And I thought seemed very simplistic. But the older I get, the more I realize that we can pretend that stamp collecting is the same as it was 30, 40, 50 years ago, but it's not. It's changed, and things that used to work in the past don't work as well as they did 20 years ago or pre-pandemic. And by saying to people, oh, we're a good healthy club, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to jump on board, because most of the time you can sense, if my father used to say, you can sense if the vultures are circling, So I really applaud your two new organizations for taking the initiative to deal with it before both of your clubs were beyond the point when you could do that. And it doesn't sound like either one were, but it just takes courage to do that, so I thank you very much for sharing that. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add, or before we adjourn?
well, just carrying on your notion about having to adapt to the times to keep the hobby strong. I'm sure you're aware that there's 3 clubs in Ontario that are running online Zoom auctions, and they are extremely successful. In fact, we have in the Woodstock Club, the Oxford Philatelic Society, of which I'm a member, and Bob Bidner and I run the auction. We auction about 200 items in about an hour and a half. Trading stamps, we get about 30 participants, and sell 150 to 200 lots. So we're trading stamps online and then mailing them out. And we have people participating from British Columbia, Alberta, Nova Scotia, Quebec, and Northern Ontario, along with local folks. So that and it gives us an opportunity to plug our local clubs while we're at it. So that's something that we started in Oxford almost 3 years ago, and since then, Owen Sound and North York have begun the same process. So if anyone is interested in either joining one of those existing ones as a participant or starting it in your own area, we can certainly point you in the right direction.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for being here tonight. I wonder, Bruce, would you send me your PowerPoint as well?
Yeah, I had sent you a copy earlier, Greg, but I made a few edits to it, so I was going to say I will send you the updated version.
Okay, that's great. And then we can send it out, and we'll post this online. And as always, if you have any thoughts on things that you would like us to consider and to discuss in this format, whether you're listening online or actually in the meeting now, just let us know, because this is really about the RPSC really trying to support clubs and do what we can to, make them as successful as possible and share ideas. So anyway, I'm really grateful to everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording, and we'll see you all again soon.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. I
Night,
enjoyed
everybody.
hearing both your stories.